Hey there, it's John here, and welcome to day one of the 7-day fast start. If you don't know who I am, my name is Jon Chintanaroad, and over the last 5 years, I've done nothing but helping people start their own profitable recruiting businesses. And the purpose of the 7-day fast start is for me to give you what I wish I had from day one. Because well over 10 years ago, when I got laid off from my recruiting agency job, and I wanted to pursue becoming an independent recruiter, back then there were no coaching programs or mentors out there to help me. So I had to figure all this stuff out on my own the hard way through trial and error. So as a result, I made a lot of expensive mistakes. Took me a long time to get momentum. I almost gave up a couple times. So my goal for all of this is to give you a much smoother ride from day one and help you get results quickly. So to help you with that, at the end of each of these videos, I'll be assigning you some homework. I'll be giving you some action items if you're open to it. And so this way, as you implement the action items step by step, you'll also be building your recruiting business step by step. And the goal of this is to make this 7-day fast start all about implementation. Right? All about implementation, not theoretical. I don't want you to binge watch all the videos like you're watching a Netflix show and then be like, oh, okay, that was kind of interesting, but take no action because that would be pointless. I really want you to consider watching the videos, taking action, and each step of the way, you'll gain momentum, you'll gain confidence, and you'll be that much closer to your goal of running your own recruiting business. So that being said, in this first video, I'd love to answer some of the common questions I get asked all the time, like how does a recruiting business work? What do I need to get started? What's the best niche to pick? How do I run a recruiting business part-time on the side without my 9-to-5 job finding out? How do I get new clients? And a lot more. My goal is to answer pretty much every question you might have right now initially, so that way you'll have clarity about what you might be getting yourself into. Now, that being said, I do understand if some of you might be feeling a little bit hesitant or anxious, so a little bit stressed out about the idea of running your own business in recruiting, especially if a lot of this is new to you. And so I want to give you a bit of encouragement for a second, because what I can say without a doubt is that regardless of your professional background, your experience level, and whether or not you have prior recruiting experience, this process can work for you if you follow it to a T. What might be nice is let me switch over to screen share for a moment and let me show you what I mean. All right, we're on my LinkedIn profile for a moment because I wanted to show you the different types of people and the results they've gotten regardless of where their starting point was, where they started. So let me pull up and expand my LinkedIn recommendations just to give you kind of a quick walkthrough. Cheyenne Tam, customer service background. She made 10 placements in 6 months. Joy Boston, she has both a sales and recruiting background. She made a $50,000 recruiting fee recently in the robotics engineering space, so very unique niche. Mike McFarland is a retired attorney who's in HR. He made 2 deals for $39,000. Keith White does have recruiting experience. He's a technical corporate recruiter, and he made a $40,000 placement fee, placing a $200,000 per year semiconductor chip design engineer in San Jose. Madison, no recruiting background, but she wanted to get into healthcare. That's her passion, what she studied. And she did really well. She made $150,000 in year one from running her recruiting business. And she's only doing it part-time. She said about 10 hours a week because she is a mom, a student in a doctorate program, and has a job on campus as well. So she's super busy, but despite that, did this much mostly through automations, leveraging her time. Phil does have a recruiting background in healthcare. He did 59,000 in 2 placements. Bamey, also in healthcare, no recruiting background, did $21,000. Ginny is a sales professional, tech sales, no recruiting background, but she understands that recruiting is sales. You're selling yourself to the client on why they should work with you, and then selling the candidate on why they might want to interview with your client. And so she did 4 deals, closed about $200,000 within 90 days in placement fees. So that's really exciting. Syed is actually pretty hilarious. When I say that's because he made a $50,000 recruiting fee by placing an attorney for a law firm. And what's funny about that is he has no recruiting background and no legal background. And I'm like, Syed, you really had no business doing this, but he just really wanted to pursue law firms as clients, and he really wanted to learn recruiting. So he just did it, followed the process. And so he's a good example of how you can break into a niche that you don't have a background in. I won't go through every one of them, but just to give you an idea of their industries, Tiffany from the construction industry, 30K in placements. Laura does have recruiting background. Gloria does not. She placed a dentist, did really well. Molly, no recruiting background, but is a speech pathologist. That's her daytime job. But she made a deal focusing on her unique niche. By the way, the recruiters are both corporate and agency. I'm going through this quickly, but Kevin ran a pizza restaurant before getting to this. Ted was a executive, like director level executive at a tech company. Placed a high level engineer for 45,000. That's one hire. Jeff was a software engineer and wanted to help place software engineers because he was tired of working with bad recruiters. He did 2 deals for 50K within 90 days. Joy Maxey, Joy is also a great example of a new niche. She really wanted to go into cybersecurity. And I said, Joy, like you have no background in cybersecurity. Like I'm happy to help you. You can learn it for sure, but just expect a steep learning curve. I was trying to talk her out of it. She did it anyways, did well, made $26,000 within 2 months. And so again, despite my healthy amount of skepticism, I'm trying to under promise, over deliver for people, but she really wanted to do that. If you go kind of, as I mentioned, I've been doing this for 5 years. So all the reviews pre 2020 are actually clients I've worked with, candidates I've recruited myself. I think if you go way back, you might see my first placement was in 2011. An admin assistant for this insurance company. Funny enough, Trish is still there. So she's been there since 2011. So they got, I think, a good deal off the placement fee for her. So anyways, feel free to jump in my LinkedIn profile if you want to read them all. You can even click on the individuals, of course, and see their background. And I'm just showing this to you not to like impress you, but to impress upon you that anyone can do this regardless of your background, regardless of how long you've been recruiting, if you just follow this process. So, all right, enough of this. Thanks for checking out the screen grab. Let me go back to the main video and kind of break down some more answers to common questions for you. All right, let's dive right now into the common questions. First one is, how does a recruiting business work? And what's a fee structure? So the way I think of recruiting is that we're basically professional matchmakers because we are finding a company that needs help hiring people, and we're finding people who are looking for new job opportunities, and we're just playing professional matchmaker. And only if our client, the company, hires one of our candidates, and it's a successful hire, they show up to work, they start on day one, then that's considered a placement. You've filled the role, you've taken the candidate and you place them with your client, and that's the ultimate goal of this. And the fee structure is 20% of your candidate's first year base salary. So 20% is standard. Of course, you can charge 25, maybe 30% for really difficult or executive level roles, but 20% is a standard that no client's going to balk at. Now, the idea of this is, I mean, if you think about it, 20% of a candidate's first year salary, that's a significant investment. And so I want to talk about this idea of a premium that you're charging your clients, because we as independent recruiters, we are not the cheapest option for companies. In fact, we are by far the most expensive option. It's much cheaper for them to try to fill the roles themselves by posting job ads, by asking their network, by asking their team members, offering referral bonuses for your employees to find people, all that stuff. That's much more cost effective. Now, that being said, when all that fails, when months go by and the company still hasn't filled the role, the hiring manager is stressed out, they're frustrated, every day goes by that the role is not being filled creates problems for the company. That's where we come in. So we charge a premium fee, 20%, right? And oftentimes if the candidate's like $100K, it's $100K base salary, we charge 20%. That's $20,000. Now, that's a lot of money, but companies are happy to pay that if you can find them a premium level candidate. So the idea is we're charging a premium fee, so our clients can expect a premium candidate. And I'm saying this as a word of warning because, if you follow this process that I'll show you throughout the 7-day fast start, you will be able to land your first new client. At that point, you won the first battle and the second battle will begin, where now you'll have to find a candidate that in their mind, the hiring manager's mind is worth a premium fee. But when you do and you present them, it's very likely for them to interview the candidate, fall in love with them, make them a job offer. And then now you've made your first placement, you've earned your first $20,000 or more, and the deal is done. So that's how the recruiting business works. That's a fee structure. That's why we charge that much, because it takes a lot of time to find people. We only get paid on performance. So all the work that we spend looking for candidates, interviewing them, prepping them, managing the interview process, we will do all of that for free up front with the hope that they'll hire one of our candidates, and then we get paid based on performance on the back end. All right, so now apologize if you already understand how that works, but I do want to make sure that all this material is designed to cover or to help people with zero recruiting experience. All right, next question is, how do I get started? Like, what do I need? How much does it cost to run a recruiting business? So it's really simple. All you need is a computer, a phone, and some skills. You have to know what you're doing. Essentially, a system and process to follow day in, day out. That's all you need to get started. In terms of what it costs, you really need to budget roughly just $100 per month for your overhead cost. And most of that $100 will go to LinkedIn for a premium subscription. So to run a recruiting business effectively, you really need to be on LinkedIn, and you can't do much with a free LinkedIn account. That's how they make their money. So we always recommend to new clients that they set up a LinkedIn Sales Navigator Core account. So it's called LinkedIn Sales Navigator Core. And what that allows you to do, it's roughly like $90 a month, depending if you do upfront or payment plans with them. But it allows you to really target ideal clients to work with, allows you to filter out candidates and find the best candidates for your clients, and allows you to send messages at high volume, which is necessary if you want to be running automations to reach out to new clients. All right, next question is, how much time do I need to spend to run my recruiting business? Now, the answer to this question depends on whether you're doing prospecting for new clients manually or if you're using automation. Now, if you're reaching out every day to new potential clients, you're reaching out to hiring managers, maybe you're looking at job boards, seeing who's posting new jobs, finding those companies, researching that company, finding 2 or 3 people within that organization, like a director, VP level hiring manager, maybe head of talent acquisition or HR. Like, imagine that's all the research. Now you're hand typing messages on LinkedIn, email, maybe doing some phone calls, reach outs to them, logging that somewhere in the CRM, scheduling a follow-up task. I'm kind of going through all that detail because I want you to picture doing that every single day. If you do that, that's like, okay, now you reach out to one company, a few people at that company. Now, if you want to reach out to a few people per day, this whole process manually should take you 2, 3, 4 hours per day. That's normally what you should budget if you're manually prospecting for new clients. That being said, if you're leveraging things like automation to reach out to new clients, whether through LinkedIn automation or email or ideally both, now the automations do the heavy lifting and they'll be reaching out for you. So in the automated approach, you really should be budgeting about just 1 hour per day. And that time is spent just replying back to people who respond to you, replying back to hiring managers who are raising their hand saying, oh, tell me more, or what are your fees? Or we filled this role already, but can you help us with this particular position? And so, yeah, doing the automated approach really cuts your prospecting time by like 80%. So, in terms of time investment, really depends on whether you're doing a manual or an automated approach. Here's another question people ask all the time, which is, do I need a license or a certification to run a recruiting business? Do I need to incorporate a LLC and S Corp to get started? The answer is no. There is no recruiting license out there. There's no certification you need to run this recruiting business. And in the beginning, you don't need to incorporate your business at all, right? For the most part. The reason why is, if you think about it, the reason why you want to incorporate like an LLC or an S Corp or something like that is so that way you can get a tax ID number to open a business bank account. And the only reason why you need a business bank account is if you're about to get paid from a client, and that only is relevant once you have a client that you've placed a candidate with. So all that setup is really only necessary once you're pretty much close to a deal. So once you have a client that's about to make a job offer to your candidate, that's when I recommend starting a LLC, getting everything buttoned up, and getting ready to receive your first placement fee. But in the beginning, you don't need any of that. And this is actually probably a good point to talk about a common trap most people fall into when they're about to start. So I'm not sure if this may or may not apply to you, but a lot of times when people I talk to are looking to start their own recruiting business, they're feeling a natural sense of fear about it. the fear of like stepping out there, fear of reaching out to potential clients and saying, hey, I want to do business with you. Can I help you? What they do instead is to focus all their efforts on doing back-end admin work. So they spend a lot of time working on their website, their logo. They're nitpicking over what to name their recruiting business. They want to make everything beautiful. They're working on their contracts. So usually they do all that stuff and they spend way too much time. And by the time I talk to them, they're like, all right, John, I've been really working on my recruiting business. I got a website. I got this. My LinkedIn profile is optimized. I picked a logo. I have a website designer that's fleshing everything out. It's looking really polished. Now what? Now what do I do? And so I'll often ask them, okay, that's great. That's awesome. How many clients do you have? Answer is almost always, well, 0. I'm like, okay, no problem. How many calls have you had with potential clients? Answer is almost always 0. And then I'll ask, okay, do you have any calls scheduled on your calendar with potential clients? And usually the answer is no. So I ask them those questions to point them in that direction, because it's important when you first start your recruiting business to keep the main thing the main thing. And the main thing is to get new clients. I hate to say this, but it almost doesn't matter how much recruiting experience you have, how hard of a worker you are, your best intentions. None of that matters if you don't have a client to serve. If you don't have a client to recruit for, then all your experience goes out the window because you don't have any work to do. So it all begins with getting new clients, and that's what matters. So in the beginning, rather than spending a lot of time doing admin work, I recommend just focusing on client acquisition, because that's where it all begins. And I found that, and this is true across the board, that whenever people spend a lot of time on their website or things are just on the back end, the logo, it never really makes a difference because their clients don't even look at that, right? A potential hiring manager will see your LinkedIn message, be like, oh, I like this message. Well, let me click on who this person is. They'll look through your LinkedIn profile, maybe peek at your LinkedIn company page. But are they really going to, go through your website, go to every page, click the About Me section, read your beautiful copy? Probably not, like 5% chance. So rather than putting time into that low needle moving task, it's best to put time into client acquisition. So I wanted to really go into that because I want to encourage you to move forward into client acquisition, less so on getting bogged down in the setup stuff. In fact, this is exactly why we've modified our program, where in the first week, we do all that setup stuff for you. So literally, like in the first week, our new clients meet with our strategy partner to help them with the niche, help them with the go-to-market strategy. They meet with our branding expert to set up their branding, their logos, their website, their copy on their LinkedIn profile. We just do it for them. And we set up their automations for LinkedIn automation and email, so they don't have to spend time, so many people I talk to spend time researching, taking demos of different tools, like watching videos, and they're like more confused than ever after kind of checking out all these demos about what tools are out there, all the AI tools. They're trying to like Frankenstein together a business, a system from all these videos they're watching on YouTube. They're all giving them conflicting advice. So we said, you know what, let's make it easy for all of our people we help. Let's do it all for them in week 1 and just launch them by day 7 with all of the best practices implemented for them. So again, we do that because we don't want people to get lost, get stuck, and we want them to move quickly to getting new clients. And that's why we do all that stuff for them, because it's very, very common. Again, don't beat yourself up if you've been spending weeks or months or longer working on your recruiting business, thinking about it, because that's where most people camp out in the beginning because they don't know how to get started with getting clients, which we will be getting into in detail here. All right, this question I get asked all the time, which is now a good time to start recruiting business? I think people tend to get, rightfully skeptical when they hear all the news about layoffs and companies firing people, and they're like concerned, like, man, is this even a good time to go into the recruiting business space? And interestingly enough, like to me, recruiting business is what people will call an evergreen opportunity, meaning it's going to be around forever. It has been around forever. It's like recruiting is like real estate. It's like insurance. These industries are all very time tested because they all require one thing in common, which is relationships, right? Human to human relationship, which is why I think recruiting is very AI resistant, because As long as companies are competing with each other for the very best talent, there's always going to be a demand, if you think about it, for recruiters to help them find the best of the best talent. So AI has done a good job of providing tools to help find resumes or help schedule interviews, but recruiting will always be involving relationship building and trust building at the core. Now, in terms of market timing and whether or not there's enough companies hiring in your niche that you have in mind, I think let me share my screen again to show you exactly how you can evaluate the market opportunity for your recruiting business in the niche that you have in mind. All right, we're back on LinkedIn here because I wanted to show you quickly how you can look at all the job postings on LinkedIn that will give you a sense of total market opportunity, give you a better idea of how many companies are hiring in your niche. And that way you can kind of start doing some niche homework initially yourself. So here on LinkedIn, I clicked on jobs. And if I were to type in just United States, right, show me every job posting in the US at the time of this recording, there's just over 4 million jobs. 4 million job postings nationwide. And as you can imagine, a lot of these are from companies that have paid LinkedIn for a premium job post, meaning they have enough of a hiring pain where they're paying LinkedIn a fee to pay for an expensive job post because that's how much help they need. And so, of course, a lot of these companies will be using and do use recruiting agencies to help them fill these roles. Now, of course, 4 million, that's like total, but let's narrow down a bit and I'll give you some examples based on common niches. So I think a lot of people gravitate to me because I do have a technical recruiting background. So if I type in software engineer and United States, that narrows down quite a lot. 103,000 job posts for software engineers. So again, a lot of demand there. If you scroll through, what can kind of be helpful is to see total number of applicants, right? So 100 applicants here, uh, 25 applicants here. This might be an interesting one. So this company is just an agency. You can kind of scroll through and see whether or not if this is actually the company posting it, in which case you can then reach out to them, or if it's another another recruiting agency, in which case obviously you don't want to reach out, but promoted by hirer. So this is actually the company. So they're looking for a full stack software engineer. The cool thing is that they posted this a week ago, but it's only 25 applicants. Now, of course, that might feel and seem like a lot of people who are applying, but if you've been recruiting, you know that the odds are maybe a couple of these applicants are even qualified. Most people just with LinkedIn, you can do one click apply, so they're just like click, 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 apply, 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 apply. So I would bet that maybe one or two of these people are potentially interviewable. I wouldn't be surprised if none of them are even relevant for the role. So when you reach out to this company, the good thing is then, yeah, you'll know that they're hiring, and two, that they're probably not going to tell you, oh, we filled that job already, or we have so many applicants that we don't need help. They probably could use some help. So that's 100,000 people in software engineering. Let's even look even further. Let's look at the uh, week. Past week, 31,000 software engineer jobs posted. The past 24 hours, there are 2,000 positions posted for software engineers in the last 24 hours. 24 hours, over 2,000. So, yeah, I'd like you to hopefully think that, okay, of these 2,000 roles in the last 24 hours, could you pick up a couple of these companies as potential clients to work with or clients to work with? And yeah, I mentioned this in other videos too, but if you've worked in the agency recruiting space, you already know that once you have three, four, five clients in that range, you're pretty much slammed. Because imagine if you have, let's say, four clients, four companies working with you, and each of those four companies gives you an average of three positions to recruit on. So four companies, three roles, that's 12 open positions. Uh, Even if you're an experienced recruiter, 12 roles, you're basically slammed. Like that's so much work to do. And especially if they're all a little bit different, that's a lot of candidates you have to talk to. So I'm saying all that because you only need about three or four clients to keep you fully busy. And there's over 2,000 job posts in the last 24 hours for this type of for software engineer. So hopefully you can feel that your odds are good. That again, I mentioned this to my other videos, but 2,000 within the last 24 hours. 10% of that is 200 roles. 1% is 22 positions. So zero point zero 0.01 is 2.2. If you can get zero point zero 0.01 of these companies in the last 24 hours, obviously they have not filled the role yet in the last 24 hours. You're going to be in good shape. So I'm drilling this down to the point of being a little bit ridiculous because I just want to show you and demonstrate that there is opportunity here. And like, it's not like the headlines look like with all the doom and gloom. Yeah, we see a lot of news headlines of layoffs, but what people don't talk about is that companies are still hiring talent, right? There's a demand for great talent still. All right, let's change it up to healthcare. I don't know, I'll put nurses, just example. Right, 7,000 nurses in the last 24 hours. I'm just looking 24 hours. If I would go back to any time, right, we're looking at 280,000 nurse jobs. I'll just be kind of product manager. I'm just making up stuff now. Not so much, 11,000. So definitely more niche, probably less people helping them. So that's interesting. So 11,000, I would think more than that. Uh, what else is there? Sales. Put the word sales, right? Almost 500,000 sales roles open right now in LinkedIn. And you guys get the idea. I won't go into. I think I was showing someone a wastewater engineer, like very niche wastewater. Even wastewater engineers, very very specific type of roles. There's almost 6,000 or 5,600 job openings for a wastewater engineer. So even if that's a niche you want to go with, plenty of opportunity. Again, you only need like 0.01% to really stay fully busy at any given time. So if you can feel like that's a doable target, especially with all the proper strategies, business development, systems, tools, then I think hopefully this kind of answers your question of one, are companies hiring? Two, are there enough companies hiring for me to offer recruiting services? And hopefully you can see that the answer is yes and yes. All right, back to the main program here. Now, this question I get asked by everyone who has a 9-to-5 job, which is how do I start recruiting business part-time on the side and under the radar while I hold my day job, and so my boss doesn't find out I'm doing this on the side. And what we've implemented is what we call incognito mode. And incognito mode is a practice that we've developed because by far, I think well over 80% of all the people we help do have a day job that they want to keep intact. They want to keep the paychecks coming while they build up their own recruiting business on the side. And if they want to go all in and quit their 9-to-5, they're essentially building their getaway car from their corporate job that they don't like, and they want to ramp up their recruiting business part-time. And then one day when they scale things up and let's say their recruiting business starts making more money consistently than their day job is when they would consider going all in on the recruiting business. So we do incognito mode to essentially create a clear separation between people's 9-to-5 job and the recruiting business. And so the two worlds never collide. They never come close. In fact, we're probably a little bit overly cautious about how to separate the two. But as a result, over the last 5 years, we've never had a situation with hundreds and hundreds of people we've worked with where their boss found out they're doing this. So again, it's a bulletproof process. And the key of that are a few things, right? One is you obviously don't want to put your recruiting business on your LinkedIn because then you might get that awkward call or a Slack message from your boss saying, hey, what's this thing on your LinkedIn profile I noticed that says you are the CEO of so-and-so recruiting, right? Like, so no bueno, don't put your recruiting business on there. On your website, you just don't want to have your name or your picture on your website. So instead of saying John specializes in this type of recruiting, my website would say we specialize in so-and-so niche. So that's simple, and there's a lot of other things that go into that, but that's essentially the basics of it. If you do it right, again, you'll have no problem with running your recruiting business part-time on the side. Now, the next question similar people will ask me is, well, gosh, Jon, I get that. Okay, I can see how incognito mode works, but I am concerned a bit because I'm concerned about any potential conflict of interest or I sign a non-compete clause. So let me just tackle that both briefly. A lot of times, mostly for recruiting agency people, right? People that work at another agency. Let's say I work at a IT recruiting agency, but I want to start my own IT recruiting business on the side. and I'm worried about conflict of interest, right? What if my boss says, "Hey, you're doing business in the same lane of your day job"? Well, obviously you want to, step number one, avoid anything that might be construed as unethical. And essentially, if you're going to not sleep well at night and you're going to be worried about it, best avoid it, right? You want to keep things above board, keep things ethical. So there's a few ways you can do it. You can do your own recruiting business if you're doing business already within the same niche. So, for example, you can do a geography separation. So if I'm in California here, I'm in San Francisco, and if I work for a company or firm that only does business in California, cool, no problem. Then I can go get clients in any other state, East Coast, right, Central Time Zone. I can target a different territory. But if my company is nationwide, has a nationwide presence, no problem. Maybe I can pick a niche adjacent lane to go in. So if my company does recruiting or I do work in IT, then maybe, but let's say my company doesn't touch sales engineers, just making this stuff up here, then maybe I start with a niche adjacent field where I say, you know what, I'm going to start a recruiting firm specializing in sales engineers and technical account managers, technical people that support sales departments, because those roles my company doesn't touch. And that way, again, I'm above board. Now, if you do want to start a business in the exact same vertical as your employer, you can't do that. Just make sure, of course, you follow all the incognito best practices. I'll be going into more detail about that later on in the 7-day fast start. But yeah, it's really important to keep things separate. And of course, again, I can't emphasize this enough, but you want to keep things completely ethical. So obviously, if you work at a recruiting agency and you have some candidates that are interviewing with your employer and their clients, you don't want to yank them and place them and try to place them with your own clients on the side, right? That would be completely unethical. You want to avoid that. But yeah, there's lots of ways to go about doing this. I won't go into all the details now, but again, if you have a job and you're afraid of having a conflict of interest, we've navigated this so many times. Again, we've never had issues with people doing this part-time on the side, even if what they're looking to do is aligned with what they do for their day job. Now, the other question about non-compete clauses, people tend to take that more seriously because they're like, John, I reviewed my employment contract and I signed a non-compete clause saying that I won't go out there and start my own recruiting business. So I signed one too when I first started my when I got laid off from my last recruiting job. And here's the deal. So the good news is for many states, non-compete clauses aren't even enforceable. Again, I'm not a lawyer, so please check with your local attorney, right, in your area. But first of all, for the most part, a lot of non-compete clauses are not enforceable. They're really there as a deterrent. Second thing is the FTC recently ruled that non-compete clauses aren't even legal in most situations, right? So the legality of non-compete clauses have been challenged, have been dispelled already. So again, you can review the notes there, but yeah, we've never had a situation where a non-complete clause was enforced and it impeded one of our clients' ability to start their own recruiting business. Just hasn't been the case. Because if you think about it, it's very, very difficult for a court or anyone to impede someone's ability to make a living, especially that living is in the main trade of their career. So if someone's been a recruiter for years and years, it's very hard for someone to say, look, you cannot be a recruiter anymore. Like, it's very, very difficult. Now, the only two situations where it might apply, where non-compete might be effective, is one, if there's IP, right? So if I work at KFC and I stumble across their secret recipe of their fried chicken spices, and I take that recipe and I open my own chicken restaurant, all right, KFC has a claim, all right, that person took our intellectual property. That obviously does not apply in recruiting. Another situation is a sale of a business. So if I run a car dealership and I sell you my car dealership, and then right away I open up another car dealership down the street, you might be like, hey, like you can't do that. You sold me your business and now you're going to compete with me in the same area. So a sale of business situations can have a non-compete clause take effect. But again, that does not apply to a recruiting business. So whether you have a non-compete clause signed or you're concerned about conflict of interest, just hope that you are feeling a bit better about that those things will not stop you from running your own recruiting business. All right, next question is what type of companies should I try to work with? Right? When I reached out to new potential clients, what type of companies should I target to do business? And what we found is that there's a thing that I call like a Goldilocks principle because think of companies as a spectrum from bootstrap startups, mom and pop shops, all the way to like Fortune 100 companies and somewhere in between. Now, and every type of company along that spectrum has a pro and a con. So if you target large corporations, the Googles of the world, the Salesforce, the big multi-billion-dollar companies, the good thing is they're always hiring. They have tons of money, so they can afford your fees. The challenge is it's hard to get in touch with the direct hiring manager. They're being bombarded all the time by recruiters trying to work with them, and they likely already have a whole army of recruiters, right? They have tons of internal recruiting resources. And I mean, I still remember back when I was a corporate recruiter for a while, I was working at Google. I walked into the Google building on my first day of my recruiting job. And like for as far as my eye could see, I saw just rows and rows and rows of desks and cubicles of all recruiters. So they had an entire building, just a whole floor dedicated to recruiters for tech. And each section was like different departments of tech. So like there's like a network engineering section, IT, software engineering, cybersecurity. So I'm like, oh, I was blown away. So many internal recruiters at Google that if you think about it as an independent recruiter, it's hard to break into that company and try to add value when they already have so many recruiters and resources at their disposal. So you don't want to target companies that are too big. Now, on the other side, if the companies are too small, the pro is that you can easily reach the founder, the CEO, the VP level hiring manager. It's a small company, so not hard to get a hold of the decision maker. The problem is that one, they might not be hiring. Two, if they are hiring, they might just hire one person from you and then they won't hire you so there's no repeat business there, likely. And third is that they probably can't afford your full fee. So if anything, you might have to offer them a discount fee to work with them. So you don't want to really be targeting too small of businesses. So who should you target? Somewhere in the middle. So we found a lot of success with targeting clients or targeting companies roughly in the 50 to 500 employee range. So 50 to 500, usually more like 20 to 200 is what I like. But again, really depends on your niche, your industries. A lot of factors are involved, but roughly somewhere in that sweet spot is nice. Because if you think about it, those companies are experiencing oftentimes some growing pains. They're successful, they're profitable, they're growing, but they haven't grown big enough yet where they have an internal team of recruiters. Most likely they have like one HR manager who's doing lots of different jobs, not just HR, but they're also posting jobs, interviewing candidates, screening resumes. They can't keep up with the growth, but they don't have the resources yet to hire a full-time recruiter, or maybe they have one full-time recruiter, not enough to really tackle all the jobs, especially the difficult jobs that they're not used to filling. And then that's where we come in, right? See, these companies who are small to medium-sized businesses, they actually rely on agency recruiters and independent recruiters to help them fill the roles. Now, typically as they grow bigger and bigger, they will tend to bring on in-house people and work and take recruiting internally. But in the meantime, they will look to recruiting agencies to help them fill their hard to fill positions, if that makes sense. So ideally, again, 5 to 500 is a nice sweet spot for you to initially target. Now, of course, when we work with our private clients, we build the target client list for them and with them, and especially and all the messaging. So this is all stuff that we help implement for them at a very high level. But again, you could do this yourself if you kind of have the overall strategy. All right. So the natural next question people will ask, well, now that I know what type of companies and company size to target, how do I get them to be my client? How do I get new clients? And really, the answer, the question that people are asking really is, how do I market myself and get new clients? And marketing, we found, is best done when you have both outbound marketing and inbound marketing running simultaneously. So outbound marketing is simply reaching out directly to the hiring manager in the niche that you want to work in. And Again, ideally you're leveraging automation because doing it manually is very time consuming, right? Finding the companies that are hiring, researching them, finding the exact individuals who are in the position of hiring, who have the authority to work with you and sign you on, and then manually reaching out to them, typing out messages, leaving a voicemail. It's very, very time consuming. The good thing is it does work if you have 2, 3, 4 hours every single day to dedicate to business development and you're good at it, you know exactly what you're doing. It does work. However, if you have a 9-to-5 job and you want to do this and you want to do this part-time, automation is almost a must because you just don't have those hours per day, if you're like most people, to spend to manually prospecting. You want the automations to do the heavy lifting. Now, the automations are really designed to be an outbound marketing strategy. Earlier I mentioned you want to have outbound and inbound. So inbound marketing is when clients come to you, which is the best, right? It's always the best when that happens. And the way that you create that situation is by generally building your authority on LinkedIn, building your personal brand, specifically by posting content consistently on LinkedIn that highlights your subject matter expertise in your niche, that highlights your investment in helping hiring managers solve a very specific pain in your niche. Now, the challenge for that is that's also very time intensive. Coming up with a copy of what to write, coming up with an image to post on LinkedIn, implementing best practice when it comes to engagement and boosting that post to get further reach. Again, very, very difficult. We actually help with this, make this really smooth and time effective for you. But in general, now, if you're great at outbound marketing, you're great at direct reach out, you're great at business development, and you have skills with copywriting and social media management, then you can do this all yourself. The idea is you want to have both running in tandem. So ideally, if you look at, okay, your marketing activity week by week, you want to measure, okay, how many outbound messages am I reaching out directly to hiring managers? What's my open rate for my message? What's my response rate? And most importantly, how many calls am I scheduling on an average week with potential clients? Ideally, within a very short amount of time, like by day 30, you should be booking one new client call every single week. That's our KPI in the program, is that every single week, our clients are booking one call with a hiring manager every single week. Again, we do that by doing outbound and by doing marketing to attract inbound leads. Now, last question that I'm going to answer here is, how long does it take to get my first placement? Right? So people ask, right, how do I get started? How do I get new clients? And how long will it take me to get a result, to get my first placement and get paid? Short answer is roughly 90 to 120 days is when, that's our KPI for our program of when somebody should get their first new client. And so let me back up and explain where we got that number, 90 to 120 days. So if you think about it, so zoom back to day one. So with day one, let's assume by day 7, you launch your recruiting business. Again, with or without our help. With our help, we actually do all the heavy lifting for you and implement everything at best practices. So let's assume that by day 7, regardless of how you get there, you're fully launched. Now you're open for business. Now you begin the marketing efforts, as I mentioned, the outbound direct reach outs, ideally through automation to cast a wide net nationwide. And you're doing content on LinkedIn to attract the right eyeballs. And even if you have a 9-to-5 job, you can do content marketing, just not, you can't highlight your recruiting business specifically, but you can essentially showcase your expertise or your passion for your space. So again, even if you have a day job, you can still build your personal brand independent of your employer. If you're doing all the marketing best practices, then by day 30, you should start booking at least one call per week with prospective clients. So that's the goal. And then, once we want to see you have at least a 30% close rate when it comes to closing hiring managers or becoming clients. So 1 out of every 3 meetings you take, right? Every 3 meetings you take with prospective clients, one of those will sign a 1-page agreement saying, I will pay you 20% of your candidate's first year base salary if I hire them. So let's imagine that by day 30, let's be extra conservative. By day 60, you get your first signed agreement. Usually happens much sooner. But again, I'd rather under promise, over deliver. Let's say that by day 60, you got your first client who signed that agreement and now you're in business. Now you kind of take off your business development hat, put on your recruiting hat and start to recruit the candidates for that client. Now, this all depends. Your time to fill a role really depends on whether or not you have recruiting experience, how much of it you have, and if you have recruiting experience in this niche. We help with sourcing. We have all the beefy corporate level recruiting tools, as you can imagine. So we actually help run searches for our clients. But if you have those tools yourself, you can do it all yourself. Now, for the most part, we usually see a 30 to 60 day time to fill. So that means if you got your first client by day 30 to 60, roughly somewhere in that range, and you take another 30 to 60 days to fill that role, that's how we get to day 90 to day 120. So essentially, you get your first client roughly month 1 or 2 months later, you find the right candidate, you fill the role, and then once you fill the role, you make your first placement, and you can send the invoice to your client for payment. That's kind of the standard that we hold, that I recommend that you target yourself, is that your first placement by day 120. Now, the good thing about that is, even though it might take you 90 to 120 days for your first placement, it won't take you another 3 or 4 months for your second placement. Because, and you know this if you've done recruiting for a while, is the moment you fill a role with a new client, how are they going to see you? Like, they're going to love you. They're going to be like, John, thank you so much. Like, we love the candidate you placed. They're doing an amazing job. Can you find 5 more people like them? Right? Or they'll say, great job, John. Love your candidates. Can you help us with this position now? They're going to roll out the red carpet because you've gone from being a stranger on the internet, a random vendor that they met on LinkedIn, to now someone that delivered. Someone that delivered where other recruiting agencies might have failed. And you found them the right person. You filled the role that might have been open for months and months and months. That's been really a thorn, in the hiring manager's side. You solved that pain for them. They're going to be internally grateful. They're going to love you. They're going to like you and trust you to the point where they're going to open up their other job opportunities on their careers page to you. Also, they might introduce you to other department heads to help fill their roles. So again, and by that time, and that's with client number 1, usually by month 3 or 4, you have a second and third client that you just onboarded. So now it might take you 2 months for your next placement. And after that, it might take you another month for your next one. And then thereafter, after months 6 to 8, there should be nothing stopping you from getting one placement every single month like that. Boom, boom, boom. 20K a month consistently. And that's how you bill $250,000 to $500,000 by year 2, somewhere in that range. Year 1 to 2, depending on, a few different factors, but that's kind of the lay of the land. And everything out there, again, I've gone through a lot of my LinkedIn recommendations. You see my case study testimonials. Hopefully you see by now that this is not a pie in the sky type of promise, but this is actually what's happening day in, day out. These are the results that other people are getting. And so hopefully, I'm not saying, again, I'm not showcasing that to brag or to impress you, but to impress upon you that you too can get these results if you follow all these best practices that you'll be learning in the 7-day fast start. So, all right, I hope you guys got a lot of value from day 1. This is just day 1 so far. And if you're ready to continue learning, then let's dive into day 2. And in day 2, I'll be breaking down common mistakes that new recruiting business owners make so that way you can avoid them. Now, before I let you go, here's some action items. Again, I promised you that I give you a bit of homework if you're open to it, so that way you can begin implementing your business and taking it seriously. This is not a academic, like a entertainment-based thing where you watch it all like a TV show, like a streaming show. I want you to take action before you watch the next video, so that way you're building your business as you go along. So the action item for this first video is really simple. All I want you to do is think of one question that you have, 1 or 2 questions at the most, that you have in your mind that for any reason I didn't cover in this video. Right? So think of a question that you still have that's lingering, that might be top of mind, that might be a burning question, or, oh, I wish John covered this. Take that question, take 5 seconds, and type that question in the comments below. And this will do a few things for you. Number 1, it'll force you to think critically about your recruiting business and identify any challenges or question marks that you have that are still unanswered. Second, by typing your question in the comments, it'll give me the opportunity to respond to you and provide you some clarity. So I can't promise you that I'll respond right away within 24 hours, but I can promise that I will personally reply back to each and every question and give you the answers and give you some clarity that you might need. And third, it'll help me to make better videos and content in the future because I'm always reading everyone's comments, I'm always answering them, and this helps me to iterate my content and give you more value in future videos. So, all right, take a moment now, drop your question for me below. I'll promise I'll read each one, I'll comment personally, answer your questions, and give you hopefully the clarity that you're looking for. All right, thanks for your time and attention, and I'll see you in day 2 of the 7-day fast start.